Howdy doody, my name is Susie, and today I thought I would share with you how I'm making this Saskatoon berry jam, and I'm using chia seeds and I'm making it sugar-free. So what we're going to need for this recipe, and you can switch out the Saskatoon berries for another berry, but the Saskatoon berries, which are also known as prairie berries or June berries or service berries, they're extremely high in nutrients, antioxidants, protein, and fiber. They even are higher in certain nutrients than blueberries. So very, very powerful in terms of nutrient concentration. Here at Maureen's orchard, and look how loaded. Maureen and Brian, sorry Brian. Look how loaded the tree is with Saskatoon berries.
Yeah, this is a great picture. Look at them.
They're beautiful. It's amazing.
I'd like to see you try it.
Oh, those little
things there. Yeah. And then Susie's putting them in that big bag.
See buckets? Made of plastic containers with a string. This makes it easy for berry picking.
Plastic over.
You've got the tools required. Oh my God, the tree's not that tall. Wow. Very nice. If only there was a live hand at the end of that pole, we could pick every single one. So I'm going to be making my jam out of this. So for the recipe, we're going to need 4 cups of berries, 1.5 cups of water. We're going to need 4 tablespoons of chia seeds, 4 tablespoons of lemon juice, about 1/8 teaspoon of salt, and about 3 tablespoons of monk fruit sugar, which is a sugar alternative. You could certainly use regular sugar or honey or maple syrup or whatever you like, but we're trying to make this sugar-free as possible. We're also going to need just a little bit of cheesecloth in a sieve. I've got a 5-quart pot, a masher. I've got my bullet because I'm actually going to grind my chia seeds into a fine powder, and that's about it. We're also going to need a couple of jars. This recipe will yield 2 jars. Now I am sterilizing my jars and lids because I want to create a complete seal, and then I'm going to keep them in the refrigerator, and that is going to enable me to keep them for a number of months. Water. So I had my June berries or Saskatoon berries frozen because I picked these in June. It's now middle of July, and in order to defrost them, I just added my 4 cups of June berries with 1.5 cups of water. Now, you don't have to do this step if you're using blueberries or raspberries or another type of berry that doesn't have a lot of seeds, but the Saskatoon berry does have a lot of seeds. So I've added 1.5 cups of water to the 4 cups of berries, and I'm just going to heat it on the stove over medium for about 5 minutes, really to break down the skin and tenderize the berry so that I can mash it, and I'm going to strain it, and I'll show you exactly how many seeds we're talking about. Now, one of the reasons I'm doing this, it has a lot of seeds, but also we're using chia seeds. So rather than having a real crunchy jam, I'm going to try and make it as smooth as possible. If you're using something like raspberries or another type of berry that maybe has a lot of little seeds in it that you want to avoid. So I've got my Saskatoon berries in my 5-quart pot, and I've just turned the stove onto a little bit higher than medium. And I just want to warm this up for 5 minutes, long enough that the fruit becomes tender and I'll be able to mash it so that I can strain it and just collect the juice. In the meanwhile, I've got my stove at 225 and I'm sterilizing my 2 jars. And I'm going to leave those in there for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, while I'm waiting for my Saskatoon berries, I'm going to prepare the next step. And that is, I'm going to use my bullet. You could use your coffee grinder, but I'm going to take 4 tablespoons of the chia. and I'm going to grind it up. You can get chia in white, black, or brown, but they are virtually the same in terms of nutrients. They are very high in fiber, protein, magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, and zinc. Now, the chia seeds actually have one of the richest, if not the richest, source of omega-3 in a plant form. And of course, the chia seeds have been used for thousands of years in the diets of Central American and Aztec and Mayan diets. So they are really high in nutrients. Now, I'm going to blend this into a fine powder for two reasons. One is because I don't want the jam to have all those little seeds in it. Two, you might not be able to consume the seeds, and it's preferable if it's in a powder form. I just think the texture is better for a jam. And also, when I was doing research into whether or not to have the chia whole or ground up, studies indicate that you're actually getting more of the nutrients from having the chia processed than you are having the chia whole. Starting off with the powdered form chia, you're going to have to use twice as much, because for every 1 tablespoon of the whole chia, you're going to get 2 tablespoons of the fine powder. I've mushed this up as much as I can, but you can see how many seeds there are, and it would just be too much for jam. So I'm just going to strain this. I just got some cheesecloth. There's about 4 thin layers. And I'm not going to bother cleaning my pot because we're going to make our jam right in here. So now I've got my fruit, and you just want to press it through the best that you can. It's hot, so I'm going to let this cool down, let it strain, and then I'll be able to gather it and really squeeze out that juice. Now, I'm gonna, at the risk of making a bit of a mess, my bowl is a little low. I want to strain enough to get just a little bit over 2 cups of pure juice. And when you're working with these berries, you really have to clean up right away, or you can stain your counter. So you can see I've got almost 2 1/3 cups of juice. I'm just adding a couple of tablespoons of water to bring it up to 2 1/3 cups of the prepared juice, because that extra 1/3 cup is going to, when we cook the jam, that extra 1/3 of a cup will probably evaporate. And because we're not adding a lot of sugar or fillers, I want to be able to have 2 cups of prepared jam to fill both of my jars. So I've got my 2 1/3 cups of prepared juice, which I'm just adding to the pot. Just a pinch of salt. Like I said, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And this really just enhances the flavor of your fruit. And then 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. And this is really for flavor, because our Saskatoon berries, they're not very sweet and they're not very acidic. So with by adding a little bit of the salt and some of the lemon juice, it's really going to make it taste better. So 1, 3, a little bit more than 4. So 1 lemon was 4 tablespoons. So I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of monk fruit sugar to sweeten it up. And you can use less, you can use more. It really depends on the fruit, how sweet your fruit is and how sweet you want your jam. But I want the jam to be a little bit sweeter than the fruit because it's jam. And then I'm going to use all of that ground chia seeds. That's it. We're going to go to the oven. We're going to turn this and we're going to cook it for about 5 minutes, just over slightly medium high. So my jars are still in the oven, nice and hot, and now I'm just sterilizing the lids in a little bit of boiling water. That's going to take 5 minutes, and it's also going to take us 5 minutes to make our jam, and I'm going to be able to pour our jam into the hot jars and seal them with the hot lids in order to create a vacuum. I'm going to sterilize my lids for 5 minutes in the boiling water. And meanwhile, I'm going to start heating up my jam solution. And you can see, this is before I've added any heat. And I've just let it sit here for a minute or so. The chia starts to absorb that liquid and your solution starts to become thicker, and it will become a little bit thicker once I cook it. The other reason I want to cook it is because I want to be able to dissolve that monk fruit sugar. However, having said that, at this point, if you really want to customize your jam, taste it the way it is right now. And I do like the flavor. It's tart, it's sweet enough for me. But this is the point in time that if you want to make this sweeter, you can add your sugar at this point, because this solution, even after you cook it, is going to taste very much the way it is right now. So I'm just cooking our jam over medium high, and you can see how much texture there's going to be in this jam from the chia, even though that we ground it into a fine powder, because the chia absorbs the liquid and creates this gelatinous texture, but it doesn't dissolve. So this will still be, some of this texture is going to be in your jam, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to remove the seeds and grind up the chia, because if you can imagine having all the seeds from the berry and the chia, it's just a lot of texture for a jam, I find, for my taste. So I just prefer to do it this. The solution is bubbling, and it's going to take anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes for your solution to boil. Once it's boiling, we're going to turn it off. So we've got about 22 seconds on the clock. Got my tongs so I can bring my jars out of the oven. I've got my magnet, and everything is ready to go. And I'm just going to grab my 2 jars. I'm going to use my measuring cup to fill up the jars. Now these, I've just finger tightened them, and I'm going to let them sit and cool on their own. I'll be able to hear the lids pop once they're sealed, and I'll also be able to see that the lids will be concave. That means it's created the vacuum seal. Once they are completely cool, I'm going to put them in the fridge, and I'm going to leave them overnight. So this is the jar that I made previously. I've had it sitting in the fridge, and you can see how thick that jam, or it's kind of a cross between a jam and jelly, because it's not smooth like a jelly. It has texture because of the chia seeds, and it does spread nicely. Like a soft jam. So it spreads nicely like a soft jam, but it's not a fruit puree per se. It has some really nice flavor. It's certainly a great alternative to regular jam. It doesn't taste like regular jam because we're not using any sugar, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. But if you're someone who's trying to avoid sugar, or if you can't eat sugar, this is a great alternative. Plus you're getting all the additional vitamins from the chia, which I think is also helpful. So every little bit helps. It's not so raw that it becomes like it's not a fruit puree, because you can see it doesn't absorb into your bread. It stays on top of the bread like a jam or jelly. And while it's not an exact replica of store-bought jam, it really does taste delicious. It's nutrient dense, and it's a fantastic alternative if you can't eat sugar or you're trying to avoid sugar because of inflammation. So if you try this recipe, I hope you like it. Remember, you can make it with any kind of berries that you like. And if you do like it, I hope you share it. Happy eating!